my name is Marianela López-Galdos, and I'm the Global Competition Counsel to the Computer and Communications Industry Association, CCIA. I thank the OECD for the opportunity to participate in the workshop of legal models of enforcement cooperation. So as an industry association, how do we see international cooperation? We believe international cooperation is essential to bring about the economic welfare benefits of competition policy. In this respect, we believe that the common understanding of G7 competition authorities on competition and the digital economy, as published after the BR8 meetings in 2019, it sets forth the right framework. It says that the consumer welfare standard should be the standard that guides competition enforcement. It talks about the elimination of competition barriers to innovation. And it encourages all of us to promote international cooperation and convergence. Later this year in 2021, as a result of the Caribbean Bay meeting, the G7 summit talked about deepening cooperation on the digital economy, enhancing the consumer choice, although we see consumer choice as part of the consumer welfare standard. And it encourages all of us to keep working and supporting innovation in the digital markets. So what is the key question? The key question is, how do we advance cooperation when enforcing competition law, when determining our policy positions? And in this respect, we think that when discussing and having a dialogue about how to move forward in cooperation, what the legal models are to make that happen, we need to take into account the current context in which the cooperation, under which cooperation will be operating in the next years. In this respect, we see a challenging matrix because we see a changing global order. We see a tendency to shift towards protectionism and towards protectionist political positions that will surely impact national and regional competition agendas. We see an increasing number of competition authorities, which is also always a good news, but makes it even more challenging. And we also see an increasing mistrust among competition agencies, and to a certain extent, lack of reciprocity. So from the industry perspective, we see a digitized and interconnected world where cooperation should advance on three fronts. First, we should advance in enforcement, including exchange of information, promotion of waivers, and ensuring that competition agencies keep a constant open communication. As part of that enforcement, we think that there is a lot of work, legal work to be done in terms of due process rights and increased transparency. But we also think that we should advance in terms of policy standards, because policy standards might condition enforcement and cooperation in that respect. So we think we need to work towards agreeing that competition policy is a welfare enhancing policy. In order to discuss which tools are the best to advance in cooperation, we think it's fair to recognize that today there's been big developments in enforcement cooperation, and to recognize that the OECD was a pioneer in promoting cooperation among competition agencies. The OECD has been doing this type of work for 50 years now with wonderful results. Some of these results can be seen every year when competition agencies meet and discuss and exchange viewpoints, but also in the multiple publications that the OECD has made around competition issues, and more recently, the joint work with the ICM with respect of recommendations and the report on international cooperation. We also see that there's been a lot of success in terms of memorandums of understanding. I think we're celebrating this year the 30th anniversary of the signature of the US-EU Memorandum of Understanding between competition agencies. And if we look at 30 years ago and we check now the OECD inventory of MOUs, we can certainly say that there's been a lot of progress being made there. And those legal tools should continue to be used and advanced in the future. And last but not least, we have to recognize that the ICN has resulted or has become a very successful experiment to advance cooperation. We're now celebrating its 20th anniversary, and we've seen great progress and will continue to play, in my opinion, a crucial role, especially in advancing frameworks and voluntary policy positions that competition agencies could voluntarily adhere to. So how we continue to enhance enforcement cooperation? I think we need to be very practical and analyze the existing legal barriers that each of the jurisdictions have identified that prevents cooperation from moving forward. In this respect, we also need to think of ways to promote waivers and ways to exchange more and better information between competition authorities. We need to streamline cross-border competition investigations, and in that respect, transparency and explanations of the decisions that competition agencies make will be very helpful, notwithstanding whether you are operating in a more administrative system or whether an agency is operating in a more litigation style system. Decisions need to be explained if we want cooperation to continue to advance. And we also think as part of enforcement, we need to align procedural standards and principles, at least the basic ones, to ensure that due process rights across the globe are respected. There are multiple tools that we can continue to advance and improve, like the waivers, as I said. There are other tools that we could start using. There are barriers like language and time differences that seem to be superficial, but in practice, they do exercise a barrier to cooperation. So we can use digital tools to help competition authorities minimize those barriers. We need to keep working at the OECD, ICN, UNCTAD level in order to keep gathering information, analyzing which are the barriers to cooperation, and thinking of strategies on how to minimize those. And I also think we need to start to think more creatively on things like expanding the already existing programs for exchange of competition officials, where one official can spend some time in a foreign jurisdiction and exchange viewpoints on how they do things. And in this respect, these are programs that already exist, but not at a larger level. They exist among a few competition agencies, and I think there are a lot of benefits in expanding such a program. And how can we advance as well in policy-related cooperation? I think as the G7 Summit Declaration of Competition Authorities with respect to cooperation, I think recognizing the benefits of the consumer welfare standard is of essence, because it would allow us to protect competition enforcement from political interference. I also think that we need to invest more in economic analysis, because we still have to learn a lot about the digital economy and its business models, and that knowledge should be shared among competition agencies. And I think we need to work more on rebuilding trust, always putting consumers first. As I mentioned earlier, I still think the OECD and ICN will play a crucial role, creating opportunities for exchanges of knowledge, drafting voluntary frameworks and commitments, especially on the policy position ones and due process, and regularly updating recommendations. In parallel, regional and multilateral cooperation, I believe that we could still move forward with relation to bilateral cooperation. In this respect, I think we might see a sophistication of the competition chapters in FTAs, and even a more sophisticated memorandums of understanding, where policy standards such as the consumer welfare standard are included. And just to end with some notes from the industry, how can we help? How can the industry support cooperation? Because we believe cooperation in competition enforcement is of essence. The industry, as an industry, we see that there is a huge risk in having asymmetries in enforcement, excuse me, and we think that those asymmetries could only and will only harm consumers if we don't work to prevent them. So we are happy and looking forward to working closely with OECD, ICN, UNCTAD, all the multilateral stakeholders, local and international policymakers to ensure that we can achieve the cooperation goals we want to achieve for the coming years. And these are only some of the issues and questions that I'm sure we will be discussing in our workshop. I look forward to our conversation, and I thank you again for the opportunity. Have a nice day.